Hey scummers, Spamuel here. Just a quick forward before this episode. If you haven't had an opportunity to enter the competition we're holding for us getting 100,000 listens, this is your reminder to do so now. So once I've finished talking, pause the episode, go to our Instagram, go to the post where we've put up the information for the competition, and tell us any gang idea you have. Doesn't matter what it is, what the idea is, how obscene it is, or how Imperial fisty it just might be. Boo. We will make sure you walk away with a complete gang based around what you tell us you want to play in Necromunda. So head on over to Instagram, do that, then come on back and enjoy the episode. Thanks. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast, hosted by me, your multi-award winning, chosen voice of the people host, Spamuel. And as always, to my right, someone whose team may have a second stadium coming along this year, but unfortunately probably not a premiership. It's the Manchester United fan, Manford. How are you, buddy?
Wait a second. Not a premiership. You sound foolish. You don't even. It sounds like you don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Manchester United.
Right.
Okay, are Manchester United derail already? Are Manchester United getting a new stadium?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Probably not.
Are they likely going to come away with any form of premiership or championship this year?
You mean will they win the Premier League title?
Okay,
Is that what you're
that's
asking?
cool. Whatever you want for your made-up sport. Yep.
Made up sport. All right. Interesting. We do have a lot of fans in England.
Okay.
who probably
And
would
hopefully
take
they
offence to
like
that.
real sports like, I don't know, curling or drudge hunting. Like, whatever. Just, I don't know.
I thought your favourite sport was like, I don't know, Kiwi wrestling or something.
Well, my favourite sport is me, because that's what happens when you're a 20-time best sports winner. But,
Well, you're
Nathan,
not.
ignoring your foolish sports choices, how are you, buddy?
I am well.
You
call it.
you look tired.
I am very
You
tired.
look run down, friendo.
I am very run down.
So,
Yes, I have had
um,
quite a strenuous last couple of weeks.
Yes.
So,
for those of
Yeah.
you who are unaware, most of you will know Nathan is a dirt grub and digs holes professionally, something that many dogs do in backyards for free with no formal training. And Nathan has had to work night shift for the last 2 weeks? 2 and a bit weeks?
15, 2 and a bit. Yeah.
And because of that, he has been working at nights when I'm doing silly things like hobby and sleep and sandwiches. And then when I go to work, he's being lazy and sleeping his entire day away.
Yes, like an idiot child.
Like an
that I
absolute
am.
idiot child.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is actually the first time we've really seen each other in a couple of weeks. And
It is, yes.
yeah.
It is most certainly. And yeah, I have and I am feeling the full effects of that because we were doing very, very long hours as well. So, but we were successful. So
Yeah.
that was good. Congratulations, work. You were successful. Nathan's hobby, Nathan's passions, you were not successful.
No.
You were left to the wayside, and yes, unfortunately suffered. Yeah, obviously you've been busy yourself.
No, not really.
No, okay, yeah.
Nah, man. I've been pretty chill. I'm actually, literally, as we speak, I'm currently, I'm half doing a shout out to some people on the Some City Radio Discord, and I'm also having an argument with them right now.
Oh, okay.
Goth Juice,
That sounds
Sump Dog,
productive.
and Corso. Yep. Also, Buck, Brimstone, Siren. You're all garbage. And, yeah. I love you all very much. But yeah, no, they're basically all yelling at me because I'm trying to say that Vansara is the best, and so are the Iron Warriors, and I'm getting yelled at. And
And rightly so. That's a dumb statement.
no, and then I had to explain to people what Zupa Dupas were.
Oh,
Yeah.
righto. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that requires some explanation. But,
Zupa Dupas are a delicious frozen Australian treat, and it is fantastic. But you know what? This opening has gone on very long. I'm going to stop arguing with people on the internet. I'm going to focus on you and this episode. And Nathan, before we jump into it, why don't you... Because you actually don't know what this episode's about.
No, I don't. No, I've been off in the wilderness at night.
I've written a bunch of episodes that we're going to be sort of throwing in there because I want to give Nathan some things that he has not actually done any research on. So
Awesome.
it'll be stuff that he
Fantastic. I
knows,
love
and he
that.
will be given talking points. But I want to see the enjoyment and the happiness in his eyes as he realizes what we're talking about. But before we do that, why don't you read out our latest Patreons?
Yes, new Patreon friends. How are we? We have Everett, Ian, Ashley, Josh, Liam, Matthew, Dean, and Matt Cook.
Now, if you do enjoy the show and you are interested in supporting the podcast, please shoot over to patreon.com/the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast. We are 100% funded by the goodwill of our audience, though we do this for the love of our hobby and because, frankly, it's not worth watching Manchester United games. Each month, we have a Patreon-exclusive
I agree.
episode, as well as competitions, polls on episodes, and other bonus content. If you are looking for another way to support us, get onto our social media, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. A like and subscribe helps us grow and get our particular brand of lore out into the world. All of our links will be in the show notes, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform.
Speaking of our 5-star reviews, they are a wonderful way to help us get found, I guess, more organically. But it's also a good way to do something positive for any Liverpool fans out there who have recently watched the EFL Cup. So just get on there and leave us a 5-star review instead, Adam.
Literally none of that has anything to do with Necromunda, and I will caution you to not take us off track like that again.
I am talking about us 5-star reviews. I want you to get on my level. It's probably pretty difficult for you because it's very, very way above your head. But that's okay. What is it? We'll talk about the Premiership Cup. Good call. Do you want to do an episode or just
pick up the ball with your hands and throw it at the goals? Like it doesn't. It just
Oh.
Anyway. So today's episode, we are actually talking about something that Nathan loves. We are going to be doing a little bit of a double episode. It's a mixture of a Gangs of Yesteryear, as well as talking about this particular group throughout the entirety of the 40k genre. We are currently talking about Scavvies and Mutants in Necromunda 40k. And yeah,
Great.
Necromunda 40k. It is great.
40K,
It is great because we've talked about a lot of like regular folk. We've done some abhumans. I get that, but I want to talk about some dirty mutie boys, and maybe some dirty mutie girls, dirty mutie dogs,
Yeah.
dirty mutie like whatever you want.
Caryatids. Mutie caryatids, they would be cool.
Just do the first read, Nathan.
I will. Burn the heretic, kill the mutant,
Purge
purge
the
the unclean.
And that's
Yes.
our episode. Thank you very much.
Is that not the first read? That should be the first read. Is that not the first read, Samuel? Is that not what you've done?
It's not.
Oh, okay. Well, that's disappointing because it should be, and that's tantamount to heresy. Mutants are the millions of people across the Imperium of man who have been deformed from the baseline human phenotypic state of genetic mutation. This mutation can be caused from birth by environmental factors like ionizing radiation, acting in utero, or by exposure to the raw psychic power of chaos. These people are destined to become outcasts and lower classes of Imperial society, electricians. They are shunned and are often hunted down and killed, as the Imperium has little tolerance for any who deviate from the divine perfection of the baseline human form in mind or body. Mutation is actually considered a heretical crime against the Emperor of mankind by Imperial authorities because of its connection to the sympathy or worship of chaos. That last element of what I read there, I think is what you need to understand about the Imperium. I think if the mutant was capable of being something that they could utilise, then they would go ahead and do that. Much like the Beastman, much like the Ogren, much like the Ratling.
Okay.
But because of the fear and stigma attached to it by chaos, then they choose automatically that this must go. We can't have this continuing on, because if we give it an element of freedom, or we attach some sort of, loyalty or some sort of connection with it, then we're leaving ourselves vulnerable to perhaps showing sympathy or empathy towards the mutant. And we can't do that.
Yeah.
Because that is the first steps towards the pathway of chaos.
Okay. So I don't like to get political on the show.
That's a lie.
But that is some propagandy crap you've given to us just then. So there are multiple instances throughout 40k, throughout the novels, throughout the miniatures games. For example, just in Necromunda itself, there are examples of mutants actively being used as labour. One of the, I believe it was one of the Eisenhorn books, when Eisenhorn and his crew are looking for particular information on demon host Cherubale. No, on Inquisitor Quixos. They go to a planet where the majority of the workers on this planet, it's an agri-world, are indentured mutant labour. So, also, if you want to look at this, psykers are mutants. Navigators are mutants. These are simply useful mutants. These are simply mutants who are able to be kept together in certain ways and be used because they are useful. So,
just for the audience, I'm holding up a pen because I have several notes to make against your...
That's fine. That's
heretical
fine.
statements.
But to say that they are without use is foolish, because if anything, it shows once again the obvious hypocrisy of the Imperium, where mutants, although need to be purged and cleaned and burned and whatever, are still too important of a resource to get rid of. And at the end of the day, what's more important to the Imperium than of anything than the ability to manipulate and utilize an individual or group of individuals for the betterment of the Imperium to the detriment of everything else?
This is not a heretical podcast. I don't need you talking down about the Imperium. You will be burnt, sir. Let me just rephrase this. Burn the heretic, you. Kill the mutant. You're a little bit too tall, so that's also you. Purge the unclean. Yes, clearly, obviously you. Anyway, my point in regard to what you're saying there is navigators, they know the navigators are a somewhat trusted mutation.
But they are still a mutation.
No.
You're holding the talking pen.
Yep, I'm holding the talking pen. So that is a trusted mutation. We know we can use that, utilize that, do whatever the case might be. Then you have the other forms of mutants that you might be using.
Yep.
That's all well and good. So where there is a whole planet of indentured mutants, that's perfectly fine, because they have found a way to control them, to put them under the heel. So it's perfectly fine for the Imperium to use it, and especially if if it is known that is from their environment, that mutation. You know what I mean? So, of course, the Imperium is going to go down that pathway and say, we can use these because they're not touched by chaos. Outwardly, they may seem just like your run-of-the-mill chaos-afflicted mutant, but we know it is from the drinking water or, the air scrubbers. We know we're doing this to them. So, effectively, they're still just loyal Imperial citizens.
I've actually thought of an incredible example for what you're talking about right there. It is the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Total Recall, when he goes to Mars and there's all the various mutants because of the poisoned air and the poor
Yep.
quality water and food and medicines.
Yep.
But yeah,
And they're still accepted. They're still accepted. They're still used,
Yep.
but they are not treated as part of the upper echelons of society,
Yeah.
and that's why they have to break away. So that's why I see the Imperium seeing these people, is that they would go, in our times of need, you're useful.
Yep.
But when we don't need or want you around, like the Victory Day parade, you're not turning up.
But it gives you a great example of what the Imperium does is everyone wants to be able to push down on someone else. And by keeping populations of mutants around, you are in fact giving your regular quote unquote normal people someone to go down on, like someone they can actively pushed aside as you're lesser than me. It rolls downhill in that respect, but it also gives the higher ups someone to say they are the enemy. That group there are your enemy, and it makes sense because me and everyone above me hates that group below me, and it could be from your governor and your nobles, and then your upper class, and then your middle class, then your lower class. Everyone's hating on the group below them, but at the end of the day, it's those poor bastard mutants and abhumans and that down the bottom of the pile that are the ones that catch it above everyone else.
Yeah, and do you know what? Rightly so. You need to give the you need to give the vast majority of the human population something to focus on. If there is a planetary invasion happening, guess what? Everybody's focused. Everybody's rallied together. We're going to hold off against the Xenos threat or the Chaos threat, whatever the case might be. If there is obvious chaos cults rising within segments of your planet, then you can be mobilized and unified against that.
Yeah.
But if you're a Factorum planet, the regular people need somebody to, for use of a better term, hate, because they don't have the best lives. So there is sort of a two-edged thing with this, where they can say, well, at least I'm not one of the mutants, or if things do go wrong, it was the mutants.
Yeah, it gives you a prime target.
It gives you a prime target, exactly. And there would be no other way to manage the vast populations of humanity. The only other way is through the ecclesiarchy. And what's the ecclesiarchy going to do when they see mutants? They're going to be like, stomp till you can't stomp no more.
This is what they use to stir up that religious fervour within the population. It's like, look, we allow this unclean thing to pollute our planet.
Yeah. But look, before we jump into the next read, we do have to mention something that you talked about, the psychers. Okay, so psychers are mutants who are incredibly, incredibly useful. Also incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And we've gone over this many times in different episodes. So their usefulness outweighs their danger. But more importantly, they can seem more human. You may not get an obvious outward mutation. And so therefore, the psyche becomes accepted because the visuals of that situation, the aesthetics of that situation, aren't as bad as Barry Five Arms and three of them are hanging out the top of his head. So when you see old Barry with his 5 arms, you go, oh, whoa. There's clearly something wrong. But you see the psycho, you might just get like a little shudder down the spine and you're just like, okay. but otherwise everything seems okay and normal.
Yeah.
It is only those with the knowledge of how dangerous that psychic could potentially be that would be reacting. And so, but then they're counterposed by somebody going, I can see the value and need of that psyker. And I listened to a podcast not too long ago, Underhive Lorekeepers, about, and they were talking about House Ty and how they use different types of psykers, which normally within the Imperium is a big naughty no-no, but they are managed, they are controlled, or seemingly managed, seemingly controlled. But more importantly, outwardly, they don't look offensive. They don't look against the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring this back here with our next read. But because I also kind of want to touch on something you've just said here. So human mutants are often terribly misshapen creatures, abominably deviating from the normal human form. On the other hand, not all mutants are degenerate beasts. Many only bear a few extraordinary traits, setting them apart from the rest of mankind, while many mutants are born mutated as a result of their ancestors' exposure to mutagens like radiation or extreme planetary environments over many generations. Exposure to the psychic energies of chaos can also lead to rampant mutation. The point I want to touch on here is, you notice there that it talks about the difference between many of these mutants being just these horrible, let's be honest, ugly things.
Yep.
Whereas some of them are simply slightly different. I want to talk about, this goes back to navigators and psykers and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what is the difference between a mutant and an abhuman?
Right. Well, do I leave my commissariat hat on?
No, like purely from the perspective of the Adeptus Terra, in my mind. So how they would look at this.
I think
Your opinion, I know, is basically mutant, bad. Abhuman, bad. Bolter, click, click.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, you could probably do what the Imperium does without abhumans. So that I'll leave that at that. Right. I love them. Don't get me wrong. Belter, always you will live in my heart.
Quick
I
shout
love
out to
rattlings.
pour one out for our boy.
Yeah. I love the abhumans, don't get me wrong, but if you were to be, I guess, a Puritan for the Imperium, you would say no, because there is the potential that they are chaos afflicted. But in terms of what you're asking about, what's the difference between an abhuman and a mutant? I think the abhuman is, I guess, a normal controlled abnormality, mutation. It is something that you're not getting, you're not having 10 different babies and going, well, that's got five arms, like 5-arm Barry. So he's obviously the dad there.
Love 5-arm Barry.
5-arm Barry, good man.
Yep.
Just don't shake his hand. Goes on for like 25 minutes.
You could just do like a high five, but he puts his 5 hands down and you slap them like different steps.
Like
pop, 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 pop.
Yeah. And now to the side. Oh my God, please. I'm going to do my rotator cuff, Barry. Can we stop this? Right. So with the abhumans, it's you have 10 babies and you don't have 5-arm Barry and 2-leg Lucy and freaking 16 eyes bloody wants to be a Spider-Man. You don't have this variation. You have hairy feet, great cooks, always hungry. That's your mutation. Yep. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And then you have with the Ogren, it's big, dumb, lumbering. They're all the same. There might be some minor variations to what they are, but as a collective, they all look the same. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the only difference between a mutant and an abhuman is if you put 2 abhumans together, when they make a baby,
Yeah.
it is another abhuman.
Yep.
9.999 times out of 10, it is going to be a flawless abhuman of their particular gene stock.
Yep.
You put two mutants together, you will likely get another mutant, but it will be very different.
Yeah, it could be. But if you don't get a different thing, and you get, like, say you've got two mutants and one has gills and the other one has, lizard eyes, and then the child comes out with gills and lizard eyes, and then, there's another family down the street with gills and lizard eyes, and it starts to be this unified mutation, then you're talking about something completely different. And
I don't want you to continue that thought, because we will literally be talking about that at a reading point later on.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes, but no, that is exactly it. That's the difference, according to a lot of different sources, as to what the difference between an abhuman and a mutant is. Now, that reading point there also talked about how many mutants are born mutated as a result of their ancestors' exposure to mutagens, like radiation or extreme planetary environments.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different to evolution? So, for example, the Ogrins put on high-gravity worlds, and... Was it high-gravity worlds or low-gravity worlds? I don't know. High gravity. You take a bunch of dummies and you put them on a planet and give it a few thousand years and you have Ogrins. So how is that different to taking a bunch of dummies and putting them on a planet that just happens to have toxic waste for, drinking water, and all of a sudden these mutations start happening so rampantly that eventually someone gives birth to a normal kid and they're just like, what is that?
Something's gone wrong here. That is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my... It's got only 2 legs? How does it even move?
You said 2 legs was like 2 legs Susie or something before, and in my mind it's like, did he just say 2 legs was a mutation?
Well, no, I meant 2 additional legs, obviously.
Okay. I've also... Sorry, while we've been talking, I've been trying to find that excerpt from Eisenhorn. And this is actually sort of one of the things I wanted to talk about here. So, you and I have already talked about the pros and I don't want to make this political, but I'm going to make this a very political episode.
Great.
So, it was in the book Malleus. So, this one here, where Eisenhorn and this ex-bounty hunter sort of sidekick of his, Harlan Nail. They've basically dressed and sort of got this disguise so they look like mutants, and they're in this sort of Underhive settlement that is full of mutants, because on this particular planet, the mutants are allowed to partake in the economy as long as they stick to sort of their neighborhoods. And what actually happens, the black market inside this society has started and grown, and they're actually in this bar, and Nail puts down Imperial currency and to buy these drinks, and this bartender reacts negatively to it, and it goes like this. The barkeep slapped 2 heavy shot glasses down on the counter and filled them to the brim with grain liquor from a spouted flask. I tossed a couple of coins down and reached for my drink. The bloodshot eyes leered at me. What's this? Imperial coins? Come on now, Twist. You know we ain't allowed to trade in those. I paused. A glance down the counter showed me that the rest of the clientele were paying in mill-authorized coupons or nuggets of base metal, and that they were all staring and scowling at us. A basic mistake right off the bat. My companion leaned forward and sipped his drink. Don't get fret with too thirsty Twist who's happened to have lucked into a good black score, eh? The barkeep smiled, and his black tongue flickered. He scooped up the coins. Ain't no fret, Twist. You earn 'em, I'll take 'em. Just saying, you might not want to go flashing 'em, Zol. So firstly, the way they speak is like, But you people can't see us because this is a recording, but I have this stupid grin because I remember reading this the first time years ago and just, I remember stopping at this and I was repeating the words and the way they talk about it. And it does explain it earlier in this section here, where they keep calling themselves or each other twists. Now, the explanation to this is twists. We were all twists here. Mutant is a dirty word if you're a mutant. They delight in referring to themselves by the Imperium's glibest and most detrimental slang as a badge of honour. It's a pride thing, a common habit with any underclass. Non-telepaths do it when they call themselves blunts. The tall, slender people of Lograd Sylvan do it when they call themselves sticks. A slur's not a slur if you use it on yourself. Now, the conversation goes, and there happens to be a dancer in this bar who is described as, and this is amazing, a naked, heavy-breasted, eyeless girl with a grinning mouth where her navel should have been, as she gyrated to the pound beat. So, pound beat is like the type of music we're listening to. So I'm loving this sort of like, I mentioned Total Recall before.
Yeah. I'm totally with that. I've not read these books. If I was asked to make a judgment on the eyeless girl with the stomach mouth,
Yep.
That's going straight to the corpse starch factory, mate.
But you keep her. Firstly, you wouldn't want to eat mutant flesh, but you do keep her in this bar, willing to work in this particular community, because it's bread and games. It's bread and games to keep this underclass in line.
So when you mentioned about the money, the first thing that came to my head was that the Imperium are allowing them to be as they are because they're playing at society.
They are playing at society, but you also need to remember they were specifically then told they cannot trade in Imperial coin. The rest of them were trading in mill-authorised coupons or nuggets of base metal.
Yeah,
These people are being paid in currency with from the farm that they work on. That they can. It reminds me of the Old West mining towns where you were paid in scrip for the company store. So everything you were purchasing was from the company that happened to own everything.
What I'm saying in this is that particular, like their particular society, the Imperium says you don't get access to real money. You don't get the proper stuff.
Because they can't allow them that freedom.
Exactly. But we will allow you to play your charade of being like us.
Yep.
Because if you deviate even further from that, if you don't want to play that charade, then we will truly come down upon you. But if you can make out, like almost like children, the children have their own kitchen and their own this, and they play around and they stuff around like that.
And they drink grain alcohol.
Yeah, they drink alcohol. Yeah. But if you have a child and that child suddenly starts to do actions and behaviours that are outside of the normal repetition of your behaviour, you go, hang on.
Them and consume their flesh.
You go, oh, no, you're doing something very wrong here, little child. So the muties must behave in a similar vein or fashion to the Imperium.
Yes.
Otherwise, they will be considered truly deadly.
Correct.
So, look, I guess another thing that you can reflect upon with that as well is that they don't allow them to use money because that's like a legal way for them to establish power. Do you know? So imagine if some mutant were to have some ridiculous amounts of Imperial credits and were able to, get on their side people who are, I guess, only in it for the money. Mercenaries, whatever, what have you. And then we're able to change the circumstance of their situation by these groups of mercenaries who just go, yeah, we fight for them. Why? Because they provide us money. Like, I don't care that he's got 5 arms. That's fine. Like, I will happily fight because I'm being given this money. Or I will trade with this person, this mutant, because I'm being given money. And so their status and their capacity to influence the scenarios and the environments around them changes drastically. So that's probably another reason why they're not allowed to trade with Imperial credits. But it also helps separate them in the sense that if they do ever need to come for the mutants, there's no money to muddle there's no potential power. There's nothing there to muddle the purge. Do you know what I mean?
They're not going to be able to bribe their way into safety with, company tokens and slugs of base metals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're going to give that to a Venator gang and they're going to be like, awesome, cool. We're going to put this into some sort of fragmentation device, but you're getting killed. Like you done.
Have to eat this now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that aspect of it, and you could, I mean, that's obviously very specific to Eisenhorn, but you could see that across all elements where mutants are dealt with.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think
it's a fantastic way to keep those populations in control. Like, I personally wouldn't do it. I would embrace them as brothers and sisters. But for the those fans of eugenics like yourself, I can see how it would be a fantastic method to keep this underclass, sort of quote unquote under control.
Yeah, but see, you would embrace them because when you grew up in New Zealand, they also referred to the sheep as your brothers and sisters, and you're just like, they're just different, yeah, Dad? Yeah, son.
Okay. So, I've got one last bit to read.
Yeah.
You and Corso on Some City Radio Discord are really keeping this New Zealand thing going. It's great. So, we took our drinks away from the bar, looking for a table. It had taken 6 weeks to reach Eachin, and I was impatient for a lead. The beat changed. Another pound number began pumping through the underfloor speakers, which, to my untutored ears, was simply a variation in auditory assault. But the crowd clapped and roared approval. The naked girl with the grinning stomach began rotating her hips the other way. I feel I should be leaving this to you, I whispered to my companion. You're doing fine. I don't get fret, twist. For God Emperor's sake, where did you learn to talk like that? You never hung with twists? Not like this. And then quite possibly coming up here is one of the greatest lines ever written in the English language, although it does barely qualify as the English language. So I'm guessing you don't so love that genejack pound beat twist. That's
gold.
The sort of the slang, this hybridized sort of smushing together of words. But so I'm guessing you don't so love that genejack pound beat twist. It's just Eisenhorn answers that question in quite possibly the best use of 6 words I've ever read.
Yeah.
Stop it or I'll shoot you. So, yeah, I love this aspect to mutation because in my mind, these people are innocent. Obviously, they're going to have bad individuals in every society, but this is a community just wanting to continue. The way they act so negatively to the Imperial currency, in my mind, is because if you are a twist that has Imperial credits, you have sold out your own kind and you are working for our oppressor.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's just, and not so necessarily that. I agree with the aspect of, yes, why have you got Imperial credits? That's odd. I don't necessarily think that it would be always down the pathway of you have turned your back on your own, your multiple backs on your people. It would be more a case of, why do you have something so abnormal, so strange? Why like you're producing these credits generates more questions than it does any form of like joyous response. We start to, and there's a myriad of responses from, yes, you turn traitor on us, or you've found a new different way to operate, and you're stepping outside of our normal behaviours, or you've become an informant, or you're working for the Imperials in some way, shape, or form. It may not be in a negative light upon the mutant class, we'll call them, but you're still working for them. This is, for use of a better term, these are our enemies. They are the ones that have the boot firmly placed upon our neck, and that is one of the reasons why chaos cults are able to use that as leverage to say, we will be your saviors, we will be your freedom. And I guess the other thing that I look at in this is that you're talking about one particular world, and this is how their muties speak and so forth. But I can imagine there'd be so many other different dialects, so many different types of slang that would get used. But there would be also so many different types of mutations as well. And so each planet would have its own very, very particular class of mutant, and how they operate, and how they are perceived to negatively affect the society. For me, as I said to you, the muties, different slang, different lingo, different mutations, all that. The unifying factor here would be a reliance on other ways of living to be able to live. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And sort of, I think, we are talking about the same thing here, where the thing that's keeping those individuals down, whether it be in Warhammer 40,000 on the different planets, whether it be within, our own real world, and that in so many cases it comes down to the oppressive nature of the government around these individuals. And
hey, we're not getting political. We're not getting political.
We're not getting political. So why don't you jump on to the next step there before I start doing a rant on why I think we should just give control of certain planets to mutants.
That's ridiculous. I think I need to reiterate.
Terror, for example.
Burn the heretic. Remember that? Yeah. All right, so our next read. Those who secretly worship the chaos gods as chaos cultists are known to be granted mutational gifts by their dark masters. Physical mutation can be an indicator of inner spiritual corruption by chaos. This is another reason that all mutants are considered suspect by the Imperium's authorities and are greeted as general social pariahs by almost everyone else across the human-settled galaxy. So this reiterates what I was saying. It's almost like a burn the heretic first, ask questions later. So they see the mutant and they automatically think influenced by chaos, especially an Inquisitor. Somebody who's been travelled across the Imperium and who has seen, the signs of chaos cult worship, or, even rebellion, and has seen the vast amounts of mutants that fill out those lost and the damned ranks. They're going to turn around and go, this is a threat. You may not perceive it as a threat, but this is a threat waiting to boil up. So rather than let's allow it to be, if we have the resources, the capacity, and the need to get rid of them, and the need is there because they're a chaos cult, but the need as in we can get rid of them in lieu of using regular humans to man our factories or our fields or whatever the case might be, then if we have that capacity, then we eliminate the mutant as fast and as efficiently as we can. And I guess the problem with that is if you do have a peaceful Imperium-centric mutant class, then what will then happen is you begin to radicalize them against the Imperium by hunting them down. So those who would consider themselves patriots to the Imperium or, loyal to the Imperium would suddenly turn because overnight we were being hunted and killed and destroyed for no good reason. There were, other than the thinnest veil of suspect that we were chaos worshippers and chaos cultists. And that is why, one of my reasons for it, is get rid of them early. Like, just annihilate them early, because you don't open up a Pandora's box of potential trouble down the line.
And I get that, but I also look at it in the sense that it is a false equivalency, because they are saying that if you have mutation, you are most likely a chaos worshipper, whereas we've already established that it can be due to radiation, genealogical issues, planetary sort of abnormalities, all those sorts of things.
I'm going to
And
I'm going to pick on your semantics here. You saying most likely. I'm not functioning it on most likely you're a chaos worshipper. There is a probability that you could be. And there is a probability that within your class you can hide chaos worshippers. Very much easier than within other classes of our hive. And we know, and it's well established within the normal human gangs, within the normal human strata, there is chaos cults can easily rise. Within the nobles, the chaos cults can easily rise. Within the space marines, chaos cults can easily rise. Right.
give me one example of a chaos cult arising within Space Marines.
Look,
That's right, you can't.
I know.
So,
What did you call me? Anyway, so right, but what I'm saying.
but no, you are correct.
Yeah.
You are 100%. But you are correct, because you are telling us exactly how a member of the Imperium would view the situation.
Yeah.
You are looking at it the way an Imperial governor would look at it, where we've all of a sudden got a lot more mutants than we should have. Well, we need to purge them because, everyone knows if you let your mutant population get too big, they start getting uppity, cults start to arise. Next thing you know, you've got the Inquisition sniffing around here, realizing all the illegal crap I'm doing.
Yeah.
So let's quickly purge these mutants to make sure that no one is looking at us in the wrong way.
Exactly. And this is what I was saying. I've got another point to make in regard to what's more important than purging mutation, but I'll just quickly say that the idea that you go off and purge mutants, you're never going to wipe out all of them. And all you're doing is creating future generations that now have an established and relatable hatred for this governor and consequently for the Imperium. So in the next wave of cults that want to arise, it's easier, it's more established, and then it's a vicious cycle after that. Wipe out the mutants again, whatever survives goes to ground, and then begins to repopulate over. It might take another couple of 100 years, but it happens. But those stories of the purges, they become like tales of dread and warning and myth as well. And they're just, the reflection of the mutant within those stories is always of the innocent, a law-abiding citizen who then is suddenly turned on out of nowhere by the Imperium. But I think more importantly, when you mention the governor, if and it's what I said before, if they can get use out of the mutant, if they can say these 10 million mutants or whatever, so that's probably excessive, but let's say 1 million mutants tend to these toxic waste fields, pulling out the small bits of recoverable scrap that we are then able to use in our industry, then they are functional and we need them. And they can have a whole vast array of mutations across their population. We don't care, provided that they can do that particular job that we don't want to either fund with radioactive suits or other bits of more expensive equipment, or people just don't want to go into those regions, so they don't go into that region and we can't access that. But more importantly, they help fund the tithe. So if the tithe gets impacted, or if the tithe, some miraculous reason, was to lessen and they don't need what the mutants are supplying, then it would be gung-ho, go get them, because they are an abomination to our society, to what the expectation is of the Imperium, And I think that's probably where the air that I side on, and it's only just dawning on me now, is that the mutant, if it was an expected part or an understandable part of the Imperium, much like the certain abhumans are, then it's okay. Have them in droves. It doesn't matter. You're an expected part of our society structure, so you're allowed to exist. But They're not, and will never be. And then the extra layer of, kick in the teeth is the fact that chaos cults easily rise up amongst within the mutant class, and that is just the smallest little bit of tinder you need to light the fire under zealots and Imperium worshippers and those who just want to kill. So it's a tough life. As Annie, the famous mutant, said, it's a hard knock life.
But unfortunately, the knock in this case is the concussive grenades going off as the enforcers throw them through your hovel window.
Yes, exactly.
So now that we've gone through the incredibly depressing life that mutants have to look forward to in the Imperium, why don't we take a step back to the Outlanders, where I believe it was the Outlanders book, where we get to talk about the Scavvies of Necromunda. Now, I loved the Scavvies because they were just they were just a dirty crew of like underhivers, and there were scavvies and these muties and zombies and scalies, and they had like mutant dogs, and it was awesome.
They were properly the proper unwashed is what they were.
Yes, they were.
I would love to see them redone in plastic. I think the quality of the miniature production these days would make them just look mind-blowing. And I always think, when I think of scabbies and all that from Necromunda, I just always think of the Gallowpox infected, and what a brilliant box that was. And I don't think it's available anymore, actually. But bringing that kind of vision to Scavvies would just be cherry on top. But yes.
Oh, it'd be amazing.
We do have a little read for them, so.
Yes. Scavvies are the very dregs of humanity, though they are so devolved and twisted that they can hardly be considered human anymore. They are severely deformed and often mutated by the toxic environment they live in. Scavvies dress in rags and are caked in the most indescribable foulness. Their skin is a yellow and disgusting mass of sores, warts, blisters and cracks. Their limbs are so often so withered or shriveled that crude hooks and peg legs are a common sight, though any scavvy too crippled to defend himself is easy prey for his fellows. So already it's painting them as... So we need to remember, first off, this comes from N95, and that edition of Necromunda was very full of what I refer to as the Imperial perspective. And the Imperial perspective is effectively propaganda, lying and telling you that it's fact. It's the opinion of whatever Imperial functionary is writing the particular manuscript or data slate you're reading at the time, and it's filled with a whole bunch of Imperial lies. Does that mean that the lies themselves are untrue? Absolutely not. Maybe viewed with sort of like rose-tinted glasses, but the rose is also tinted in fascist, oppressionist, like government.
I thought you were going to make it political, but yeah, no.
I'm not making it political. So we obviously know the Scavvies are proper underhivers, as I said before. They're mutants. They are these people that they obviously would have been human at one point, but this is, in my opinion, looking at the old sort of Outlanders book and that sort of thing there, from what I recall, they were some of the older inhabitants of Necromunda. They live in those domes that are so far below what we would call, society now, that their food is the recycled mess of the recycled mess that underhivers eat. Their water is filtered through generations and 10,000 years of radioactive fallout and polluted water from innumerable factoriums, and it's the concept of pure water to them is laughable.
Yeah, exactly. It is something that, like, when you mention that, it's like food and water, okay, two sustainable things, but even just the light. And I think you and I have talked about the concept of light within a hive and how it can just, at that level, every part of their world is has already gone through so much usage, through so
Yes.
much, like, I guess, strain and stress already, that they are the end result. And they say that under the right amount of stress and strain, carbon becomes a diamond. That is the opposite within in the underhive. You don't get that. Unfortunately, you pop out a scavvy, and it is. Unfortunately, they're probably better off than mutants in the sense of, like, the first impressions of them, because they are two-armed and two-legged, and they just kind of go, okay, you're actually marginally more acceptable until we get up close and start to see what your lifestyle and your condition has done to you. And they are, again, when we talk about the scabbies and the mutants, they're not centric to just Necromunda. This is across the Imperium, except for Canola World, where it's a beautiful, idyllic place. So
I like to think of Planet Canola as the literal Garden of Eden,
yeah,
except the snakes bring you apples, and the apples just bring you happiness.
yeah, and the snake acts as a leg warmer on cold days, just wraps itself around your legs and just like,
Exactly.
you stay nice and warm and pretty. So the outcome for the scavvies is always going to be the same. So you may have people there who there is nothing wrong with them. They come from good genetic stocks and so forth. But it's the condition of their environment. And very much like the mutants, except I believe that it takes longer for them to actually become scavvies. So they are born in some way, shape, or form that looks more normal to humanity, and then they begin to get the little scales and the poxes and everything else like that popping up on them. So they are born basically fundamentally human, and then things begin to affect them, and then I guess that the effects of how they begin to look sort of begins to engineer how their life is going to run as well, which is really quite sad. But I want to jump into our next read, because it's going to be very similar to what we're talking about anyway, and that is, scavvies scratch out an existence in the most foul and polluted wastelands of the Underhive, hungrily watching for an opportunity to murder, rob, and pillage anyone or anything nearby. Scavvies are made up of fugitives, outcasts, refugees, members of disposed clans, and scum shunned even by undercity gangs. They carve out gang territories in the shanties, among the old derelict factories and heavily polluted parts of the undercity. Scavvies have to band together to survive, and a typical band will be made up of several extended and severely inbred families. The dominant male in the band rules with brute strength, low cunning, and having as many siblings as possible to exert his will. Though individual scavvies pose little threat to well-armed gangs, they are cunning enough to use traps, ambushes, and the weight of numbers to even the odds. So, exactly what I was saying. Like, they start off fundamentally human, and as their condition affects them, as they become scabby looking, then they need to go into this other lifestyle of, what did we say, murder, robbing, pillaging. All these horrible things. There's actually a TV show I watched not too long ago. We'll call it a TV show. It's like a Netflix series, I think. And it is called American something. I can't quite remember the name of it.
American Gods?
It is called, no, not American Gods, called American Primeval. Right. And if you haven't watched it, people out there, go watch it. It's actually, whilst I was watching it, all I could think about is like Wild West Necromunda. But they encounter a group of people stuck out in the fringes of the West exploration, and they're all French speaking, right? But they clearly have some major genetic problems with them, like the look of the individuals. There's one or two in there that look quite normal, but the rest are just in a dire strait, right? And they send out a young girl to basically go lure in travellers. So they come and try and protect this young girl, blah, 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 and they get drawn into their camp and then they're ambushed and so forth. And in a straight up fight, they're not going to win because they're malformed. They're suffering from many degradations to themselves physically and probably mentally, who knows. But they're almost like a collective, like a little group of family sort of thing. And that's the way I see the Scavvies operating as well. They are, the fact that the group in this American Primeval speak a different language, you could see the Scavvies having their own lingo, their own way of speaking. You know what I mean? But I could also see them.
What you talking about, twist?
Well, I wouldn't see themselves calling themselves twists. Don't you think so?
Oh, well, it depends. Because you mentioned before that the groups coming down, it can be a mixture of former gangers or mutants, all that sort of stuff as they come down. They would bring information. They would bring lingo and colloquialisms and that sort of stuff with them.
Yeah.
I can imagine that those Scavvies, as these groups are brought into the gangs, into the tribes, into the societies, that the language would evolve. And I think, there would be some upper hive. I say upper hive, but you know what I mean? Like some more far northern influences being brought into the... I'm just thinking north can be straight up.
No, I like it. I really like it. Just like referring to the tops of the hives as far northern. You're from the north, are you, mate? Yeah, real far north, mate. Real far north. That's great. I love that. That's a great way to refer to it. But yeah, so you're right. Their lingo would change and so forth. But I really do think that they would potentially look down on mutants as well. They would see them as people we fight with and we interact with because they're in the same levels as us, but we're not mutants. I started off quite human looking, quite normal looking. It's just an unfortunate circumstance of my environment that I've ended up looking like a scavvy, that I end up in this horrible state. And those who are probably closer to the Undercities would be more inclined to be tolerant of the mutants, but those who are not, who have come down from further, would still have that same mindset of, that's a mutant. I'm a human. I'm an unfortunate human because of the condition.
We're allies of convenience, not friends.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, they have, as you said, their skin begins to yellow and they have massive sores and warts and so forth. But fundamentally, I'm still human. I'm just not very pleasing to look at anymore. If I ever was. So you can and what I was mentioning earlier about before, that circumstance of the worse and worse they begin to look, the less chance they have of integrating with gangs and mercenaries who are going to take them on missions that are going to be plentiful and bountiful for them. So they're going to have to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. And consequently, they're going to become very Cordorian in the way that they scavenge their weapons because we don't get enough money. We don't get enough resources to actually get good equipment. So we have to reclaim things or manufacture things and so forth. And so in a straight up fight with a well-equipped Van Sar gang, it's all over Red Rover for them. They're gonna cop it sweet. So what do? They make traps. They do ambushes. They do all the things that would consider them like as maybe lesser fighters, like, you're not having a straight up fight with us, which then further engineers the negative mindset of their reputation. It's just going, well, the way that you operate is garbage. The way that you look is garbage. So all of these pieces fit together and you should be shunned and rejected from society, and rightly so, because of all these elements. But yeah, it's sad. It's sadder for me than the muties.
Yeah. Well, it's ironic that you mentioned the corridor. Scavvies cannot organize themselves well enough to occupy or operate any territory that they might inhabit, which may or may not be a result of their lack of education. Thus, any location that they move their base camp to will quickly accumulate garbage and filth, becoming highly contaminated due to their disgusting way of life. Very Cordorian.
No, sorry, I thought you were doing a Goliath read then. Sorry, go on.
Though occasionally a scavvy king will arise and unite several scavvy bands together into a ramshackle tribe. Such coalitions can create a ragged horde of scavvies big enough to overrun settlements and trading halls. The excesses of King Blacknose, the 81st, are still remembered with a shudder in the Underhive, and the settlement of downtown has yet to recover from its period of rulership by the so-called Beggar King. Once again, this is all Imperial propaganda. It is very, they're too dumb to actually maintain territories, right? Like, they're these filthy, savage, broken individuals that, they can be beaten into submission by one of the largest of their kind, but it never lasts long. Like, these disgusting, filthy, horrible, you're just sitting there going like, Jesus, God, Emperor, like, lay off them a little bit, buddy.
No, wait. You haven't shown me where it says that they are able to organise themselves, where they are able to operate a territory effectively.
Okay, we'll say the same thing about the Cawdor. Prove that the Cawdor can do it.
They can. They run the... what's the big temple district called again? The themey thing.
The themey thing.
Themey thing. I can't remember the name of it, but they do. They are coordinated. They run themselves. All I'm saying is that you keep claiming it as Imperial propaganda, but maybe that propaganda is steeped in a little bit of truth.
I mean, I don't think it is. I think it is more likely one of the ways that the Imperial government uses propaganda to sort of, once again, control the mutant populations, to keep people fearful of them, and not accept them as equals. Like, yeah, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not going to convince you to sort of agree with me on that one.
No, because you don't have any evidence, and the only evidence we have is supplied by Games Workshop, who would never lie to us. Never. Right, so this is something that we've talked about in one of our Dramatis Personae episodes, about the notion of a class of people needing a king, a ruler, a leader, something that they can look at and be like, that is my leader, that is the one that I turn to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is why you will have Scavvy Kings rise. But, I mean, it's hard to go against it when, it says the excesses of King Blacknose, they're still remembered with a shudder in the Underhive. And also the settlement at downtown, never having truly recovered from the rulership of the Beggar King. Like, there would be information saying that, yeah, they turned this place into a cesspit. They allow...
But that's one thing I love about this. It's showing that King Blacknose the 81st, firstly, the fact that all 80 of his forebearers were King Blacknose shows just how noble his line was.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it. Like, you can just imagine they've managed to seize control of downtown, and all of a sudden everything just gets bad, because you can imagine they would just be looting, and they would be eating the food and drinking the drink, and basically I'm imagining them getting it all out of the city because they know they can't hold it. They know they can't.
Yeah, but they're still
keep it,
leaving
so they're taking it back to their camps.
They're still leaving it in a terrible way. This isn't a raid. This is ownership of the city for X period of time and trashing the joint, basically. And so where you say it's Imperial propaganda, the aftermath of the Beggar King's reign comes to an end, and they're like, this place is garbage. And like there is probably an argument to say that the infrastructural services just didn't work. They just went, no, we're not aligning ourselves with the beggar king, or the normal upper hive support, or the normal logistical support that would be offered to downtown would all be cut off from the upper hives, because they just go, well, we're not going to support this beggar king. He can function on his own, and understandably so. The infrastructure begins to dwindle, begins to die, and the town gets left as is in a horrendous state. So when it is recovered, it is in that horrendous state. But I don't believe that. I think that the Scavvies would simply run the town as they would see fit, and the way that they would see fit is as a disorganized mob,
Yeah, that's fair.
and they it's not against them. It's the way they are. It's who they are. It's what they become conditioned to be because of the circumstance of their condition. So, but we'll sort of punching through the reads on the Scavvies, because they all are very similar. So we want to sort of map them all together, and then probably have a little bit of a bigger discussion about it. Fortunately, Scavvy kings are usually more concerned with avoiding the attention of the authorities than conquest. They are more likely to use fear, intimidation, and extortion to get what they want. Their scrupulous subjects move in to blockade vital resources and charge Underhive dwellers tolls and taxes whenever they have the numbers to get away with it. At times like these, the honest, hard-working settlers will look to gangs and bounty hunters to run the Scavvies off until life gets back to normal. I will say that last line of that is very, very propagandist. At times like this, the honest, hard-working settlers. Bullshit. They're each there is no way anybody in authority is referring to the settlers as honest and hardworking. They're all just like these little annoyances on the frontiers. These absolute numbnuts for going out there, and we have to go protect them. We've got to go provide them support. That draws too much on my enforcer resources, or even PDF resources, or whatever resources are needed to provide that extra element of support, protection, security, whatever you call it, to those settlers. So yes, I do agree that last bit is probably a little bit more sounding like propaganda, but I think the main thing of what it's saying there is the Scavvies use their time of occupation, we'll call it, as a method and a means to just generate as much income and resources as possible. And exactly what you said before, if it ain't bolted down, they're taking it and moving it on to wherever their little hovel is, wherever their main base of operations is. And then once it starts to get real heavy with the gangs coming in, bounty hunters coming in, all that kind of stuff, they're like, see you on the flip side, son. I'm getting the fire truck out of here. So they boot off. But they've the tolls and the taxes and whatever else they've done have left a permanent scar on whatever settlement they've gone to. And it reflects on the type of people that they are. They're not unified by purpose, they're unified by survival, I guess. And so if they can make out their survival for this short period of time, that's what they'll do. And then they'll move on to the next period of time where they, again, try to make out their survival. So, and the kings are the ones who can understand that vision the most. Because, and I say they're not unified because they come from all different aspects of society. And also, I guess, that I mean, I don't really lean on this, but that lack of education, I don't think that's a major factor, especially on a planet like Necromunda, because everybody's fighting for survival, except, well, it's hard to say, but, the lack of education thing with regard to the Vansar, they probably don't suffer from that, but they are, once again, still fighting for survival. But yeah, anyway, that's my little
You've gone weirdly nice to the Scavvies there for a second. I'm unsure what to make of it.
I'm challenging myself in my own head at the moment, because I don't regard them as negatively as the mutants. They're just bad eggs. And yes, you probably have to get rid of your bad eggs. I do totally agree with that. But they're not overtly or visually going to be taking on chaos. And that to me is the biggest problem they're going to have. So scabby gangs could still very much be loyal to the Imperium. You know, they'll still be treated poorly and whatever the case might be, but they could they're still coming from an area where the Imperium is seen as the be-all and end-all of their existence.
Yeah.
Anyway, but as I said, we'll punch through the read. So your next read.
So, as stated previously, scavvies are often mutated by their dreadful living conditions. Most of these mutations are simply horrible and inconvenient. Webbed fingers, extra toes, tentacles for noses, skin colours ranging from bright orange to sickly green and so forth, and some even still support Manchester United. However, some scavvies are born with useful mutations, and other mutants hide out amongst the scavvies for fear of the redemption and Imperial authorities. These creatures may have lashing tentacles, bony spikes, crab-like claws, and other natural weaponry. Scavvy bosses ruthlessly exploit these mutants as enforcers and gangers, though the mutants also enjoy a chance to make the normals pay for their oppression. This goes back to what you said before, those other mutants coming in and the scavvies almost seeing themselves as better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right here, we're seeing not only do these scavvy bosses maybe see themselves as better, they recognize the difference, and they, once again, they have someone to push down on, these actual mutants, where they are then able to say, well, you can have a place in my tribe, but you got to do my dirty work. You can have a place in my tribe, but I need you to make sure if someone shoots at me, you stand in front of it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's...
You'll be accepted into the next strata of the Imperium. You know what I mean? It's only the smallest raise up on the ladder that you're on, but guess what? You get you don't have to. We actually use Imperial credits, because we don't necessarily work for them per se, but we get them and we use them because people are more inclined to trade with some of our scabbies who are not as badly afflicted. Like, you're not sending old Christopher Crabclaw to go trade with the local trader, but any other scabbies, they're fine. So
yeah, Harry, relatively human, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. But again, this is where they teeter on the brink. So once they start to have the lashing tentacles, even tentacle nose can be hidden, but is dangerous. But the lashing tentacles, the crab-like claws, all that kind of stuff, all the really outward and quite obvious mutations make them a threat. And that is when, and look, they're probably never going to be the threat that the Imperium wants them to be to properly purge them, but it's the concept of their threat that can be used against them. So the enforcer can say, do not ally yourself with these because they have mutants within their ranks. And we're currently conducting an investigation to show their alignment with, the Chaos Cult from Sector 370. We know that they're aligned with them. So anybody trading with them, anybody having any dealings with them, will be considered as sympathizers to that cult. And so suddenly the resources and what little access they have to normal Imperial life dries up overnight. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it puts more and more pressure on that gang. And the sad part is, if there's mutants in the gang, the ones who are not really that effective in combat, they will be the first ones to get shunned. They will be the first
But not
ones.
even that. Remember earlier where that propaganda piece where it's like, any scavvy who can't defend themselves is automatically a target for their fellows.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, it's probably true. I can imagine scavvies and mutants getting to a point where they go, listen, I've got a little rumbly in my tumbly, and our last few raids haven't gone our way.
The traders aren't trading with us anymore because
the traders aren't trading.
Something has happened.
Yeah, and old Defenceless Daniel. he's looking pretty tasty. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Or even like, Bacon Arms Barry. He's just
Bacon Arms
what a
Barry.
terrible curse to have as a scabby.
He got scorched by that hand flamer
Yeah.
when we went up against those redemptionists, and let me tell you, the man smells crispy.
Yeah, I have found myself awake just licking his arms. It's not healthy, and I want to take that out of my life. So I think we kill him and eat his arms. Any other parts of him? Just the arms, please. Yum yum yum.
Just the arms.
Yeah, right. So
So before you go into your next read, this is what I stopped you talking about before. When mutation becomes stable. So we are going to have a look at some of the sort of groups and individuals that can make up the Scavvy tribes and gangs from back in N95. And the first one of those is the Scalies. I decided we should start big on this list, and so you're going to start with the biggest of them all.
Right, cool. So Scalies. Even in the hellish pit of the Underhive wastes, some mutant strains stabilise after a time to form distinct subspecies. The most common human subspecies in the Imperium are the abhuman races of Ogren, Ratling, and Squat. The Scalies are another such subspecies, though they are still a highly unstable strain compared to normal abhumans. Scalies are a massive reptilian mutant, almost as broad as they are tall. Their durability and strength are legendary amongst the Underhive scum, and they have a fearsome reputation to match. Scalies are rarely seen creatures, but they are by far the most numerous in the Underhives of Necromunda. They are undoubtedly intelligent, but they seldom speak. Their altered necks and twisted voice boxes have changed too much to speak human languages anymore. This means little is known about their origins and whether hidden clans or tribes of Scalies exist in the most severely polluted bad zones of Underhive. Why individual Scalies choose to ally themselves with Scavvies is unknown, but any Scavvy boss worth his salt will do everything in his power to recruit and hang on to as many Scalies as he can find. So I get what you're saying. This was potentially a stabilized mutation, but I don't see it. You know what I mean? And there's two factors for it. One, outwardly they don't really look human anymore, and those who haven't seen Scalies imagine like what's his name?
That lizard man from
Spider-Man.
the second Spider-Man movie. Second one? Third one?
Third one. I don't know. The lizard dude, the lizard king from, I will call him, basically imagine something like that. Secondly, and more importantly, is the lack of communication. So how can you accept this creature, this thing this human that you cannot communicate with? You may be able to give it instruction.
You can communicate with them.
They can't communicate back. Its twisted voice boxes have changed too much to speak human languages anymore.
Yet I can go to my parents' house and I can get like a doggy treat and I can say to his dog, come here. And she gets the treat and she understands me. And I understand that when she takes the treat, she's happy and she'll snuggle up against me. And then when she realizes I don't have treats, she leaves me. But yeah, just communication outside of their own species or the lack thereof doesn't necessarily mean they are not a society. There are tribes of them.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying why they would not be accepted by the Imperium. And the reason for
They will never be accepted by the Imperium.
Are you eating a super duper right now?
I am. But no, at no point would they ever be accepted by the Imperium. Just because they're an abhuman species doesn't mean they're accepted.
Oh, I thought you were saying, like, there's potentially here that they're the Imperium.
Absolutely not. No.
Because as I said, visually it's a big no-no. But for me, the more important factor is that you can chat and talk and do whatever you want with Ogrins, Rattlings, and Squats. Right?
Yep.
There's a level of understanding and communication. If you're bumping into a Scaly, unless you've got a translator already and an already established form and method of communication, it's going to be a non-event, and probably more lead into a violent event. So
it's not even that. Ogrins, they're people. If you inflate them like one of those balloons you make sausage dogs out of,
Yep.
and feed them nothing but like canned chili for 3 years. Ratlings are just tiny, thieving, hairy toddlers.
with
Squats
with guns.
Squats are basically like everyone's grandpa, and he talks about how everyone worked harder in his day, and he had an argument with the neighbour from across the road 38 years ago,
Yeah.
and he's never forgiven that bastard.
Yeah.
But they look human. They still look human. The beastmen, you got to remember, are an abhuman race. They are recognised. They are seen as stable, but they're illegal.
But
You are allowed to kill them.
yeah, but the beastmen you can incorporate a little bit better from what I was saying before. The communication,
Because they can communicate,
can
yes.
communicate. They can,
Whereas scalies
Yeah.
don't look human.
and
The first
can't
stage...
communicate.
they can't communicate. Yeah, but the first stage of accepting them into Imperial society, you need to look at them and say, you fit in.
Yes. Yeah.
The scalies will never do that.
No, and they'll be considered. Imagine if they could communicate, or if they looked more human but couldn't communicate, then they would be on the similar pairing as the beastmen. You know what I mean? Where they would just go, okay, usable for a time or for an element, and then see you later.
I can definitely imagine, in defense of a hive, a local governor or someone or militia leader rounding up packs of scalies, caging them up, pointing them at the enemy, sticking an electro goad into the small of their back and saying, go get them, and pushing them towards the enemy. Absolutely. But
I could
you
clearly
shoot them on the way back.
Yeah, exactly. You shoot them on the way back. I could clearly see like a fallen noble of House Grime leading an entire army of these things. And it's actually, as an original nadir of mine, I would probably call them like the Steelbound Legion, and just create
I
a myth.
like
Yeah,
that.
it's good, isn't it? Yeah, entirely my own thought. Not at all engineered or governed by anybody else. But exactly what we're saying. They would be driven forward and killed. They would be a means to an end. And that is only at the most extreme end of the scale. Like, it is like we are in such dire need that we have had to activate things that should either be locked up or killed. So that is how bad our situation is. And it's probably against Chaos Cultists, who derived from our mutant class, which we should have wiped out earlier. So we're in a terrible situation.
It's something we've done to ourselves. We should probably go purging.
Yes, exactly. Let's go on Sunday for a purge, mate.
But I see scalies as the mutant version of an Ogren, effectively.
Yes. Yep. Definitely so. Yeah. It is. It seems to be the case of humanoids that you will get the bigger, chunkier one arise from them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll have your normals, and then something will happen, and a group or a cluster will begin to grow bigger, stronger, whatever the case might be.
Just so bigger, stronger, louder, smelling faintly of potted meats. Just a quick shout out to our boy, 3 Ogrins in a trench coat. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why I'm insulting him. I love him.
Do you know what? It seems I can second it because it seems justified. I don't know why either, but it's justified. Yeah.
Well, the next group that make up scabby sort of gangs or tribes are the plague zombies. I love these.
I'm going to stop you right there, right? There is no way in hell you can convince me to anything about the plague zombies other than just wipe them out. So, but continue your read. Professional show, tight.
Yep. Long ago, Necromunda was swept by a mysterious neurone plague, which boiled up from the Underhive and touched even the highest peaks of the spire. Victims of the plague fell ill for weeks, days, or hours, depending on their strength. If they succumbed to the fever, their brains were rotted by the terrible disease. All higher reasoning was lost, and the victims became little more than beasts. Unfortunately, beasts still need to eat, and soon thousands of brainless, half-dead plague victims roamed the boulevards and thoroughfares of the great hives, seeking flesh to feast on. Each time they pulled down some luckless citizen and tore into their flesh with teeth and nails, another victim was infected, and another plague zombie was added to their ranks. Anarchy and chaos swept through the hives as Necromundans struggled to fight off the hordes of plague zombies and drive the surviving ones down into the Underhive. Zombie plagues still break out from time to time in the Underhive, and packs of plague zombies are yet another of the many dangers in the dark underbellies of the hive. The zombies live in wild packs like dogs, fighting each other off and living off what carrion they can find, or anything that is stupid enough to let itself be caught. Scavvies often round up packs of zombies and send them against outposts, settlements, and rival gangs that they are attacking. In sufficiently large numbers, these creatures can be fearsome opponents. Plague zombies have forgotten the meaning of fear and do not experience pain, so they are hard to stop. Also, any wound inflicted by the plague zombie carries the dreaded plague and may turn its victim into another one of the plague zombies it was previously fighting against. So this is why I think plague zombies could be incorporated into Imperial society very easily. So think about it this way. Especially in the Underhive, you are going to have like a problem with... I got nothing.
Yeah,
No,
I was
they
waiting for
are
it.
an immediate, like, you see them, burn the hovels, burn the towns.
Yeah.
The plague zombies, and I love this, plague zombies have sort of carried over into 40k and even the modern versions. Typhus has the plague zombie troops. What are they? I want to say Galapox infected.
No,
but
no,
those
no.
are the
They're just
mutants
plague
you
zombies.
talked about before.
They're straight up just plague zombies. That's what they're referred to as.
Plague zombies.
Yeah, just straight up plague zombies, and that's where I have most reference to them. So that they're part of the forces of Nurgle, and the plague zombies that would have been on Necromunda would have been also from some form of Nurgle contagion that has struck the planet.
Absolutely.
So, and yes, typhus.
Poxwalkers.
Poxwalkers, sorry. My apologies. Yes, you are right. Poxwalkers. So...
No, but they were, was it the 13th Black Crusade they were referred to as plague zombies?
They were, yeah.
And I swear Typhus had a like a detachment where it was him and like 200 poxwalkers.
Yeah, I think so. Like,
Yeah.
and he could lead them, and then like they would get all these benefits, and they could raise up heaps more. And they used to have a rule with like the more they killed in combat, close combat, the more they would raise for themselves. Just a general question about zombies and like just in general, right? So just take from movies you've seen and all that. This is one thing that's always like irked me a little bit. You see zombies like take down a person, right?
Yep.
And the person gets swarmed, and they get bitten and chewed and ripped and turned. How does that person then become an effective zombie? Imagine if they had their foot gnawed off or something. Like, it's counterproductive to zombie numbers. You know, you need to just bite them and move on. But then how does that, sate the hunger of the zombie? It doesn't, because they've only had a little nibble. So there surely must be victims of zombies who are fully eaten and then get turned into zombies, and they're completely useless and can't do anything because they're fully eaten, or 85% eaten or 60% eaten. Makes no sense.
You are 100% correct, yes.
It makes no sense. Like, you surely there must be, like, a governing zombie who's just like, all right, guys, it's a biting round tonight.
There is, and his name is Carloth Valois.
Valois,
He actually he controls the plague zombies.
yeah. So,
And there is there's the Psyker gal from Necromunda, Queen Lorsha.
there is two, isn't there? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, so Karloth would simply go, hey, we're just biting. We need to pump up the numbers in recruitment. So no more than 2 bites per victim, please. You know, and if you
Yeah,
can,
it's like take a little nibble off like the thigh or something.
yeah,
And then let it go.
yeah, yeah. If I see more than 6 bites per individual, then I am going to somehow work out how to switch your brain back on, and then you'll realize what you are, and it'll be the worst thing for you. But yeah, that's always bugged me in zombie movies. I'm just like you see this massive swarm eat somebody, and you're like, how did that person turning into a zombie after that? They are a buffet. It makes no sense.
So the neuron plague is widely believed by some inquisitors of the Ordo Sepulchrum, a new Ordo Minoris of the Inquisition dedicated to battling the undead. They believe that the walking pox is a variant of Nurgle's rot.
Oh, right. That would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I think it would depend on the amount of time it takes for the plague to spread through the victim. So if the first zombie bites them and it takes 10 seconds for the bloodstream of that victim to become infected, I think after 10 seconds the zombies would stop biting. But if it takes longer, if they have a higher tolerance, or it just happens they're able to hold off for a little bit longer, I think that is when they get to the point where they eat more of the victim.
Yeah, which is not what you want. So you're looking for low tolerance individuals. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Just a little nibble, move on. Mind you, when you started to read about how the victims of the plague fell ill for weeks, and hours and whatever, depending on their strength, it all sort of sounded a little bit like the Delacroix, like when they had the sleeping plague or whatever it was that it sort of affected.
Yes.
So you can just imagine House Delark going, yeah, we've got another round. And then like, oh no.
Oh no. Oh no, they're not going bald because they're getting ready to apply the mayonnaise. Their scalps fell off.
Yeah.
Oh no.
All right, gassed up, everybody. We're going to need
Gassed
everybody
up.
here.
We're going to war. Yeah. Someone wake up the fish gods.
Yeah. Right.
Tell Steve to stop smothering himself in tartar sauce.
Is he even part of our gang? Why does he do this? He rocks up every Friday.
He's a Goliath with a head injury. Leave him alone.
So look, let's put a pin in this one for sure. Plague zombies are not anything that would be accepted by the Imperium. They are shoot on sight. You don't even want half a hug from these people or whatever's left of them as their humanity.
But they are a perfect terror weapon. They are exactly what I said about the Scalies before. The Scavvies are rounding them up, maybe throwing them hunks of meat. They know that the tribe has to go without food for a couple of days because we've got to keep the plague zombies hungry and fed and focused. But as soon as we take that settlement, we can eat our fill. Like we can go for it.
Yeah,
we just gotta go hard for a couple of days.
Yeah, during that period of time, Defenceless Dan, it's his time to shine.
Or what is it, Bacon Arms Barry? Sorry, friend.
You are going to be our number one recruiter, but I'm not great at recruiting. You'd be surprised how effective you're going to be. Right. So there's another element to the scabbies, and we'll jump onto that one now, which is the scabby dogs. Wild animals inhabit the Underhives, and just like humanity, have not been untouched by their environment. Scabby dogs are like scabbies themselves, in that they are twisted and degenerated from their natural state, and also much like scabbies, they are ruthless survivors. Packs of these dogs prowl the underhives in search of weak prey and can be a terror to unarmed communities. They can also provide the vital function of consuming the dead in an environment with no interest in funeral rites. Occasionally, a scabby leader will befriend a pack of these wild dogs and bring them up into battle. Although this level of domestication is of the lowest sort, and its loyalty is entirely up to the dog remaining fed. This is actually a sadder part. This is where I have a greater tolerance for the scabbies. I have an even greater tolerance for the scabby dog. This is the most base form of survival that it's looking to achieve. It's not, there's no agenda. There's no wanting to fill its pockets with Imperial credits or anything like that. Though it would be cute if it had little, doggy pockets.
Like a little battle harness.
Little battle harnesses. That's where I keep my lucky nail clippers. I never use them because it hurts. This is my Imperial credits pouch, always empty somehow. Just unfortunate little puppy that I am. And that's my spare leash, just in case, you want to take me for a walk. Hey, come on.
You can just imagine this thing. Walk. Who said walk?
Yeah.
Who said walk? Didn't say walk. Bite.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just sad when animals get, afflicted by human conditions and then are forced to, I don't know, become worse. It's almost like little feral cats. They always make me so sad. I just look at them and I think, oh, you poor little thing. You're so angry and you're so little. It's just something wrong with you. The old abattoir I used to work at, there was a couple of feral cats around there, and one person tried to take one home, and after 3 weeks just brought it back and was just like, no, this thing is horrendous. And that's the same image I have for these scabby dogs. The leader takes them in, all right, bacon arms, you're patting them, and only you're allowed to pat them, but they bite. You see my justification. So then uses them for a single raid, and then just has no capacity to keep them fed, and they're just going to boot off, and he's just going to be like, you know what, go dump them back down in sector 3-2, because I know where I can get them from now. I'll just get another pile of meat or resources or whatever, and I'll be able to draw them back to me. So
yeah,
I feel sad about the scabby dog, and again, one of those things that there is zero justification for the Imperium using them at all. We can sort of say, scalies and scabbies and mutants are press ganged into service at the absolute direst points or put into factorums. These scabby dogs would be, again, another sort of element like the plague zombie. They'd be a shoot on sight, I reckon. Just be too much risk, too much disease, just get rid of them straight away. And
there's nothing outside of basically just immediate annihilation.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I could, in saying that though, it kind of gives me the impression that they would become more and more cunning. So they become this cunning wolf pack, in a way, because they understand how dangerous the two-legged humans are, and so they're like, we need to stay away from these things, otherwise they're just going to annihilate us. So they become more wary and, I guess, more precise in their choice of targets. Not to say they're assassins or pathfinders or anything like that, but they're certainly not picking on a gang of enforcers, having learnt that, shotgun rounds to the scabby dog face is not a fun way to mete out an existence.
It's kind of upsetting. Now, one thing most people would have probably noticed is when it comes to the sort of regular rule books and the N17 version of the game, scavvies don't exist. Mutants don't exist. There's not really a way to play this game. And for those of you who think that, you are actually very wrong. So, Games Workshop released quite a while ago an Apocrypha Necromunda by the title of Devils of Gunk Deep. And it has a way for you to take the outcast gang and effectively create a gang of mutants. And they had this really cool D66 table where you were then able to sort of, you could either pick or you could randomly roll mutations for your gangers. You have things like eye stalks. When the mutant is in cover, ranged attacks against them suffer an additional -1 penalty. In addition, their vision arc is increased to 180 degrees.
That's cool.
That's fantastic. Then you've got massive claws. The mutant's unarmed attacks are resolved at +1 strength with an armor penetration of -1 and the rending trait. Like, that is 10 credits.
Oh yeah, so they've actually got a credit attachment to them as well. See, I really like the one.
You can pick them.
I really like the one just for the name of it, Void Soul. The mutant is immune to the effects of psychic powers, though the arbitrator may still rule that indirect damage from psychic powers like telekinesis, thrown objects can still hurt them. But just like that idea that they're a void soul, that sounds terrifying. You know what I mean? Like they're a psyker in the most base form.
Yes. Then you've got stuff like scaly skin. The mutant has a natural 4+ armor save, which cannot be improved by armor. You throw a couple of these together: tentacles, toxic blood, 2 heads. Here's one: vast bulk. The mutant increases their wounds characteristic by 1. That's 10 creds. Scaly skin, that 4+ natural armor save, 25. So 35 credits there. And you take that and you add that to an Ogren, for example. I understand it's an outcast gang only, but any arbitrator or group of friends wanting to play and take advantage of these rules, here's my gang idea. Take the new abhuman rules for Venators, right? Mm-hmm. And mix them with this mutations.
See, I didn't know
rule set.
I didn't know about the mutations rule set because I just didn't know about it. So I was instantly thinking about the Venator gang. I was just like, Beastman or just whatever in that list is perfect. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But if you slam all these in there, because it says there that the leaders and the champions can take them as a primary skill set, the mutation, outcast mutations, so you can purchase more with XP. That's cool. That's actually really brilliant.
Yeah.
Whereas
so this rule set is for the outcast. Sorry, go.
Whereas the scum can only take like 1. You know what I mean? But whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who cares? Yeah, right.
But that represents your gang perfectly. Like your Scavvy King is going to be as far away from mutated as possible. He's going to be, because they see themselves as that strata of society above the mutants.
Yeah, yep.
And you could play that way. But then, you get your champions. They're going to be, his cousins or brothers or... I say his only because what we were reading from the Outlanders rulebook before specifically stated that it was typically led by an aggressive male.
Yeah.
But I would love to see maybe a Scavvy Escher gang led by this sort of gang queen who's been, who's gotten cloning technology and has been cloning herself with sort of dirty DNA and has created this group of mutants. Like, that would be sick. But mix this Apocrypha Necromunda, the Devils of Gunk Deep, with the new Venator rules, and add scaly and scaly skin and
vast bulk.
What was the other one? Vast bulk. Put that onto an Ogren, and you have a scaly.
Yeah,
you can never give it armor. You give it a harpoon gun,
which you can get straight off the black market anyway.
Exactly.
So if
you see what I'm saying,
if I was an arbitrator for a campaign and somebody came at me with this, I'd be like, make what you want. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, make the models that you want to build.
Make the rules work for
Yeah,
your models.
yeah, exactly.
Don't make your models work for the rules.
Perfect.
Do something crazy. If you want to do a Venator gang, if you want to do any gang and you want to add a single mutant in, I would be cool with it.
Yeah,
I
roll
would
off
say
this
for
chart.
your
Yeah.
Ganger and Juves,
Yeah.
they get one. If you want to run a Goliath gang that just happens to have a mutant with them, because this mutant was pretty bloody strong and beat the absolute snot out of one of the Goliath, and they're like, all right, okay, you've got 2 heads, but that just means you can fight in 2 directions. Sounds great to us.
You are very dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, like we love that about you, can we just say?
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Do it.
But this is creating a story for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you can say that we've got a link with whatever group in the Underhive, the Undercity, whatever the case might be, and we're able to utilize every so often a mutant who wants to come up or something along those. Even a Chaos Cult gang could utilize some of this stuff.
Oh my God, Chaos Cult's not taking advantage of these rules, or arbitrators not letting their players take advantage of these rules in creative ways. Like, I would love for there to be I would love for us to do like a campaign where everyone plays a Venator band.
Yeah.
Like, no house gangs, nothing like that, just Venators.
Yeah.
And play this sort of stuff. Play all those excess, like, this ridiculous rules that the Apocrypha Necromunda give us.
I would
that would be so much fun.
I'd make people roll a D66. Like, you know, it sort of implies that you can pick it and pay your points and so forth.
Nah, roll it.
Roll it. Like, and yes, okay, I got massive claws on my guy who's got, I don't know, 2 power swords. You're like, oh, well, he goes to unarmed attacks now because he can't use the power swords. This has happened to him. He is a mutant.
Yep.
This is what like that and that's the way you play the game. Like, you don't play it allowing, like, trying to look for the perfect meta or whatever. And I'm not going to talk badly about 40k, but because I've been so engrossed in 40k recently, like, there is such a desire to play meta that I was just like, oh my God, like, can't I just play a cool story? Like, that's the way I grew up playing the game, and that's the advantage of Necromunda, though. I think the cool story, what did you called it, and it's like a common term, the rule of cool or something like that.
The rule of cool, in my opinion, is always the first thing you need to take into account.
Yeah, and like, when you look at this list, yes, you can do probably some nasty combinations or whatever, but who cares? Roll the D66 and let the gods decide let the god, the emperor, decide what you're taking.
But that's I would love to, if you want to make that Goliath gang with 2 heads, or you want to make that the Orlock that has the scaly skin and is like a badass biker, or any of that, do it and say to your arbitrator or your campaign tyrant or whoever's running it, and just say, listen, I want to use some of these, and this is how it fits into my gang, this is how it fits the story. I mean, Cawdor players, maybe this episode isn't for you. Everyone else, there is one here. For 15 credits, you can have a mutation called Wing Membranes, and the mutant can leap distances up to their movement characteristic without making an initiative test, and never takes damage or becomes prone as a result of falling.
Because they're just
you are basically one of those flying squirrels.
Yeah, you've got an inbuilt flight suit.
Yeah,
that's freaking cool.
And you can give that person a sniper rifle, make them take the shot, and then just jump off the back of the tower. It doesn't matter. You get to ground level. Yeah. You've beaten everyone on the elevator, and you're the first in line to eat old Defenceless Dan.
It's
like,
how did you get here so quick? Just show me that shoulder, mate. I'm getting a good little nibble out of that.
Where's old Bacon Arms Barry? I'm feeling peckish.
He's rounding up zombies, mate.
Yep.
But I will say to you something you just said then, and is now, as much as I can, going to be my term. What did you, instead of arbitrated, what did you call them?
The campaign tyrant.
Campaign tyrant. I've not
Yeah.
heard that before. That's fantastic.
I'm 90% sure I stole that off Tim from the Eye of Horus. I think
Right.
he said it once like 2 years ago, and it's just clicked. It's the ultimate term, in my opinion, for describing anyone in charge of a campaign.
Yes, campaign
Because they
tyrant.
need to be a tyrant.
Yes, yeah. I love it. It's better than arbitrator.
Yep.
Your local campaign tyrant. I just imagine somebody just like throwing books down, yelling and bawling, and then at the end of the day still asking people if they had a great time. Just like, yes, we did, tyrant. Thank you for asking. Yeah, you're lucky I did. Yeah.
You smashed several of my models with a hammer.
Yeah.
Well, they shouldn't have rolled those ones.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Well, I told you to roll 3 dice, and you did.
Yeah. So as soon as you picked up the dice, you were playing. And that is declared by the tyrant, the campaign tyrant. Right.
Boom.
Love it. I love this, the Devils of Gunk Deep. I haven't seen that before, so I might even just go, like, dabble with that a little bit. I'll see if I can take
have a
something to
look.
Arcramunda. I don't think that. I don't reckon that'll allow it. It's too.
I reckon they'll let their 20-time best sports winning favourite attendee maybe twist their arms a little.
How did you go in the last one? You won the best sports?
So you have one more read there, and so we obviously didn't touch on the Scavvy Kings or the Scavvies themselves because most of the information was given about them, and in N95 there actually was a named character in the Scavvy gangs, and he is a Scavvy King of particular note. So why don't you read that one?
Right, yeah. I guess I can read about illegitimate king. King Redward the Magnificent. I'm assuming he gave himself that title. I hate people who give themselves their own titles. It's just silly. That's you. King Redward is a scabby...
I have no idea what you're talking about.
King Redward is a scabby king who is slowly but surely building a fearsome reputation in the Underhive. He is called the Magnificent, not because of the way he dresses, but because of the size of his paunch and his impressive collection of scars and missing extremities, such things being considered extremely prestigious by scabbies. This aside, Redward has proved himself to be a resourceful, cunning, and quite exceptionally brutal leader, all of which have helped to enhance and increase his reputation. At present, the number of scabby bands that Redward commands are limited to only a dozen or so, but new gangs are joining his entourage all the time. In Girder Falls, the settlement that has suffered most heavily from raids by Redward's growing army, there is a growing sense of fear and unease, and a feeling that something really needs to be done about Redward before he gets powerful enough to cause major trouble. He's an upstart, and all he's doing is trying to get the light of the Imperium to shine upon him. And then it's all over Red Rover for King Red. It probably is already all over for him. I'm assuming he doesn't get a mention in N17. So he is now a footnote.
The Scabbies have not gotten a lot of mention in N17.
And it's because of him. He destroyed them. In the time from N95 to N17, he just continued to grow his army to the point where they're just like, okay, that's it, we've had enough, and gone and purged most of the Scabbies. And that's why you don't see them in N17. So King Redward the Magnificent single-handedly removed the Scabbies from Necromunda. Well done, sir. You rose to the top, and all you did was drive them down 10 times worse than what they were. He's a letdown.
Well played. Well played. Yep.
Well, there's a truth to it. If we don't see them now, he had a growing army. We should see that growing army, should we not?
Maybe he is gathering his power
Yep.
below below the Underhive
Yep.
to a point where he's waiting for the perfect opportunity to get in there and take over sections of the hive.
How's he sustaining this army?
Bacon arms barrow. They give him a bunch of the what was that spore medicine? Remember how they would say that you'd almost rapidly regrow parts of your body?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, one of the drugs. Yeah, that we did in the
Yep.
drug episode. Yeah, and so what? He's just hooked up to one of those machines, and just
Yep, and they're just chomping down
Yeah.
on that delicious Canadian cut bacon.
absolutely.
Yep.
Every faction needs a leader, a figurehead of some description. Obviously the Scavvies are going to have kings because it's what's important to them. But to me, it's the most dangerous thing that you can do for the Scavvies and the muties and whatever, because all you're ended up doing is drawing some form of attention toward a class or a people that don't need that attention. And so old Redwart is going, hey, look at this. I've heard you use the word army before. Guess what I'm doing? And you start to use that terminology and it steps away from gang or, force or even battalion, and you start to talk about army, and you just go, oh, you're dabbling in something that House Grime is more than happy to get themselves involved in, and that is kicking the daylights out of an underfunded, underarmed, undersupplied army, because that is
Yes.
their greatest achievement is picking on the weak.
Well, we had examples of that during the Arantian Succession. Remember when the cults and the hordes of Underhive mutants and that were coming out from beneath the cities, and the gangs were getting bigger and bigger as the groups of them were joining up, and these individual tribes and sort of coalitions were joining up and getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And as they were marching towards these larger settlements and towns and cities in the Underhive, the individuals like Redwart who were in charge of these would have been what's what I'm looking for, more than figureheads at this point.
Oh,
They
yeah,
would have
yeah.
been war leaders.
Yeah. They become incredibly tasty targets for anybody wanting to prove their worth to a noble house or even just to their gang house. They just go,
Yeah.
I executed Redwart. Bloody beautiful. Who was he? Oh, I don't know. He's a figurehead of the army. Well, perfect. We needed him dead. But, 6 months earlier, he was nothing more than a swamp king. And if he'd been killed, nobody would have batted an eyelid. But the Aranthian Succession draws that out, and the fact that he's able to mobilise a large force. But not to say that he was at the Aranthian Succession and so forth. But anyway, yeah, every faction needs a good leader, but I think within the mindset of the Scavvies and the Muties, I think it's a terrible idea. Just have heroes and have champions. Don't have leaders, because if they try to step outside of their bounds, then they will be corralled very, very quickly and without remorse.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
No, that's yeah. Okay. Listen, I understand where you're coming from, but I love Redwart because the fact he is magnificent, not because of the way he dresses or anything like that, but because he's got a fat dad. He's effectively King Redwart, the dad bod.
Yeah, the magnificent dad bod.
The magnificent dad bod. And he's got a bunch of scars. Every warrior loves them. And missing extremities. I am hoping we are talking about toes, maybe an ear, and maybe a pinky.
Yeah.
Redwart, I hope you've got your nose. I hope you've got your thumbs. Come on, buddy. Keep them out of the nows of those thumb crooks.
I think there is a miniature for him. I don't know.
There is. It was unreleased. There's videos. There's pictures of it on the internet.
Yeah, okay.
He's got the robes, he's got the gut hanging out. He's got like an auto pistol and a staff with like a what's what I'm looking for? With like a a yellow face symbol, very orcish.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think it was unreleased.
Right, and if that be so, then it does look like he's got both of his arms and everything attached to him. So whatever he's missing is...
He's definitely missing toes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe he got them upgraded to missile toes because of missile toes.
All right. So, what was your gang idea for the Mutants and Scavvies?
Well,
because I've got one.
I do.
But I want to hear yours.
I do have a very particular gang idea.
It's a group of people hunting mutants.
Damn right it is. Each one of them a true dedicated son of the ecclesiarchy. Each one a fine-tuned killer of wiping out anything that doesn't look like a standard human. And do you know what gang I call this? The Everyman Gang. As every person should be in the Imperium.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be great models for that. That new kill team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, they'd be. They would love every second of it. They would just be like, "This is why haven't we done this sooner?" You know, we're having all of our vacations like this now. This is brilliant. I love it. Yeah. No, for a gang, I was actually thinking a gang that like doesn't quite see themselves as downtrodden and as worse off as the Scabbies, and sort of almost sell themselves off as mercenaries, like Underhive mercenaries. So Undercity mercenaries, you know, where they're saying,
Okay.
you know, we still operate within the bounds of your credits and your trade and whatever the case might be. But you want work done that's really deep down, dark in the most horrible areas. That's where you come to us, and that's how they try to sort of monopolize the market for themselves, and say,
Yeah.
you know, we're the go-to gang. So they'll go off and kill other scabbies and muties and all that kind of stuff. But it's not in a case of, you know, they're trying to prove anything to the Imperium. They understand their lot. They're not going to be accepted in any other sphere of the Underhive than where they are right now. But they also understand that if they can control the wealth that is trickling down from above them and have it funnel through them, then it'll make them the most powerful group of scabbies. So they're almost, in a way, traitors to their own kind, but not so, because any other scabby would do this to them anyway. But the idea is that they are then able to go off and do all these dirty, underhanded jobs, things that, like, you know, enforcers like, yeah, we're following a lead, but we don't want to go down there. And all we need to know is that this lead leads to a dead end. So there's a particular encampment, settlement, whatever, in your part of the hive. Just go clear it out. Like, I don't want any evidence of, you know, a non-guilty, I don't want any evidence of innocence. I just want this whole settlement wiped out. I want it all gone because I don't want to come down there and have to do an investigation. Here's a bucket full of credits, or here's, you know, a couple of members who are clearly on the pathway to becoming scabbies. Have them. Add them to your ranks. Do what you will with them. Here's some weapons. Here's other things that aren't necessarily credits, so it doesn't, you know, rise too much suspicion for you. But these are ways to keep your gang ahead, or your force, I guess, because they would have to be bigger than a gang. They would have to be almost like an organization. But when you play them as one element of that one gang that is going off and doing the tasks for the higher up within their hierarchy. And so the weapons would be a little bit better. The options they would have would be a little bit better, but I would definitely be using that chart to have the occasional mutation on one or two members. And that's the enforcers don't regard that. They're just like, okay, yeah, I can hear the clickety-clackety of his crab claw, but that's okay. I don't mind, because you're being sent on a task for us. And then when they're not doing those tasks for other members, they're offsetting their own agendas, their own missions. They're still going off and raiding, you know, the local settlements and whatever. They're still doing normal scabby behaviour, but they're trying to make themselves as the go-to gang or the go-to institution for anybody in the upper hive that needs to get something done in the Undercity. I think it's a cool idea.
That's sick.
And it would allow you to put better gear on these guys. Not everything has to be reclaimed. Not everything has to look like a piece of trash. They could have like a really nice combat shotgun in there. You're like, how'd you get your dirty paws on that? No questions. Boom, boom. So, yeah, I think it would be a really cool modelling opportunity to be able to mess with like your normal aesthetic of just grimy and dirty.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
that would be cool.
That is my gang idea. What is your gang idea, good sir?
So it's a group of mutant mercenaries, and no, I really like that. I would go the opposite. I would go. I'm picturing a Cawdor gang, but they would be made up of the mutant dregs of society, where, in my mind, a member of an actual Cawdor gang has made their way too far down hive, or has been found after a battle and is unconscious and ranting and talking about the Emperor. And these mutants originally care for the Cawdor member.
Yeah.
And it's what you said before, they still see themselves as part of the Imperium. It's like, yes, we understand we're dirty and we're wrong and the Emperor doesn't love us, but the Emperor still loves us, and we still love the Emperor. So we need to do the right thing, and we need to look after this person who's preaching his word. And this Cawdor is disgusted in them, but because you've hit this preacher, this Juve or whatever that they now see as their preacher, has seen a real temple and has been a part of a real redemptionist band.
Yeah.
So these mutants sort of band around them, and despite him saying, no, you're all dirty, you need to leave me alone, you need to get away, it's just like, well, that's very funny, but we can be better. We can be better. Like, we'll follow you, and you'll just be like, you do them as a Cawdor gang, but the prayers are really just a little bit broken. They are almost the exact opposite of what Cawdor would be. They're not redemptionists, they're just demptionists. Like they want to be redeemed for what they are.
Yeah.
And
they sort of see
play
themselves as like, they see this preacher, this person who's seen the temple, as this very thin line of attachment to the Emperor. Like, it's like, I still have a chance. Just give me this slightest moment, this slightest point of connection, and it's all I need. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. What
Correct.
you were going to say? What do you play
that's exactly it. And I would do them as exactly that. You'd have them, like, instead of flamers, maybe it's you'd model them up as mutants who spray a noxious gas that just happens to melt through like biological matter.
Yeah.
Or your eviscerator isn't an eviscerator, it just happens to be these huge clawed arms that you're ripping into your opponents with. Your cherubs would be these horrible misshapen, like, picture a mixture of the what are they called? The little floating bobbles from the mouse drains, the termites.
Oh, termites. Yeah.
Those little buggers mixed with the cherubs, or do them up as like spore mines from the Tyranids.
Oh,
almost
that
these,
would be cool. Yeah,
these weird things that have been harvested from down hive, and sort of they keep them because they, in their minds they float, which makes them closer to the Emperor than we are.
Yeah,
because if they chose to, they could float all the way up to him.
They have this like divineness because they don't need to be walking in the sump. They don't need to be walking on the horrible ground, and they have like almost like these comically useless wings that are attached to them as well. And it's just like
Exactly.
These are an imagination of one of the Emperor's angels. It's just so far devoid from what it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
But you'd do them that they'd have the robes, and you'd and I'm a sucker for a standard bearer. All of my squads in the Necromunda 26 are going to have a standard bearer showing their allegiance, but you'd have one of these. The preacher's dead. The preacher's died, and they have his book, so that your gang leader would be this scabby king as he tries to lead his flock to the upper hive. And I'm just imagining this standard has the bones or the clothing of the preacher, and because they're bringing him with them because they just want to bring him home and rejoin House Cawdor, because they've all decided they're part of House Cawdor now.
Yeah, see,
And
to me, it almost validates them as well. Oh, we have his bones.
Yes.
Like, yes, he died. Well, don't know how he died. We do know he got eaten by one of us. But,
ignore the teeth bones.
yeah, but this validates us bringing him back to House Cawdor because we're trying to bring back what we regard as almost a saint. And I can imagine his personal book. It's almost like, I think it was... I watch a lot of kids' movies these days. Toy Story 3, where Buzz actually presses the button on himself to to read, to give himself advice, because he's like, what do I do? Yep. And that's what I can imagine the gang leader's like, is just flips through the book and pretends to read it, but is really just running through ideas in his own head and just saying, this is the idea we're going to do. We're going to wipe out that other scabby gang because they hate the Emperor. And they're all, absolutely.
They're all, oh, what? They hate the Emperor.
Yeah.
We got to get them now, boss.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I can't believe that word.
Yeah, and all he's doing is settling a personal vendetta. Like maybe they've stolen something from him, or, they kicked him out of their gang. He's just like, how dare you? I will come back.
I got you pricks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm justified, and I'm... What is it when you have the law on your side because I've got the bones of a saint with me? I'm legally allowed to destroy you, scabby gang, because I'm not a scabby gang. I'm a Cawdor gang. Yeah. No, it's a cool idea. I love it. That's really cool.
No, I would enjoy that gang. I think it'd be a lot of fun because every single one of them would have a mutation. Every single one of them. And I would roll the mutation before I made the model. So I'd roll it up and it'd be like, all right, so this one's getting 2 heads. And so I'd have to say that they would automatically cost this much more. And this one is getting claws, and this one's getting scaly skin. And it'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of fun sort of as a modelling opportunity as well.
I think so too. I think you'd lean on the poxwalkers and all that kind of stuff to get to try to sort of find your base of the miniature. But I think a project like this, you don't look at it as how good are they going to perform. You look at it as, what are my options to create some really cool looking fun miniatures here?
Yes. I really like this. I need to stop talking about it because I have so many Imperial guards still built.
I was going to say, will the Scalies and the Scavvies make it into the 26th?
Absolutely not.
Coward. Absolute coward. Do it.
No. All right. Closing thoughts.
Oh, look, I think I can reiterate my closing thoughts from the start of the episode. Burn the heretic, kill the mutant, purge the unclean. So, beyond that, not much. No, in the reality situation is the scabbies, the mutants, and all of those attached to them, other than the plague zombies, show us the Imperium, the underbelly of the Imperium. It steps us away from the battlefields. It steps us away from the gang confrontations, and it shows us the reality of life in this terrible future, and it's but like the bits you were reading from Eisenhorn show us that there's a joy to have in such a terrible existence as well. There is a function to what they can and are able to do. So I think scavvies, mutants, scalies, all those kinds of things, if you're adding them to any part of your game or they're adding them to the story of your gang, they just give it so much more colour. They give it so much more depth than just another gang fighting another gang. You know, they can just give you so much more in the sense that you can begin to explore how and why they have interactions, much like the Ratskins as well. You know, they're having interactions with the Ratskins opens up a whole network of questions of why and how they integrate with your gang and your lore and your theme and your campaign. So, yeah, it's another one of those things that I think the gangs of yesteryear really provide for us, is that it's a very much an open door as to where you want to take it personally for what you want to do with it.
Perfect. Perfect. I really like that.
Any closing?
Not the first part, because that was incredibly offensive to my mutie scavvy brothers and sisters.
Closing
no,
thoughts
I love
yourself?
it. I hope we see more of the scavvies in N17. I really want us to see more of the weird insanity that made up the scavvy gang. And also, it brings in another crew that doesn't have the alliances or the power structure or even the coherency of house gangs. And it gives you sort of another possibility at an everyman group within this game that we love. And I think I would love to see more of that.
Yeah.
I want to see models with 2 heads and 5 arms and bacon arms.
Bacon arms.
Was it Defenceless Dave? Defenceless Dave. I want to see Defenceless Dave.
Dan. I think it was Dan.
Defenceless Dan?
Yeah.
I want to see Defenceless Dan.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, these miniatures just allow you to just go whole hog. Like, you want to see some weird artwork brought to miniature format. Build a scavvy gang. Build a mutie gang.
Yep.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have arms and legs. He'd have flippers.
Yeah. And he'd be faster than lightning. Yeah.
I actually have a quote for the end of this episode. And this is one I actually think you are going to enjoy. Because it describes the holy struggle that mutants and scavvies have within the Imperium every single day, just trying to better themselves, to better their station in life, and to make a better tomorrow for their scavvy and mutant children. Thought for the day. Let not the mutant seek our places and share our lot. And that actually comes from the 8th edition rulebook of Warhammer 40,000.
Beautiful. Finally, it's taken a whole episode. Good to see you're on board. Welcome to the ranks. Here's a flamer.
It's horrible. Goodbye, scummers. And that was our latest episode of the Underhive Lorekeepers podcast. I am Spamuel, and on behalf of the Lorekeeper team, thank you for listening. Please follow us on our social media pages available in the show notes, and don't forget to follow and review us on your preferred podcast platform. As always, if you have questions, complaints, corrections, or if you wish to rise up against the unjustified and heaped indignities poured upon us by our Imperial overlords, and finally strike out for freedom with your brothers and sisters once and for all, please reach out to us at underhivelorekeepers@gmail.com. Thanks.